It was supposed to be another ordinary shift for Marvin Ellis, janitor at Blackridge Station, an underground research facility tucked beneath the Wyoming desert. The base itself was classified, known only to a select group within the government and a handful of scientific elites. Marvin didn't care much about what went on beyond the airlock doors and security-restricted corridors. His job was simple: mop the floors, empty the trash, and make sure the high-tech labs didn't get too dusty. For 10 years, Marvin kept his head down, ignored the cryptic whiteboards and glowing machines, and kept to himself. He wasn't paid to understand the experiments. He was paid to sweep. But on that particular Tuesday night, everything changed. Marvin had just finished cleaning Sector C, where the air always seemed colder and the scientists more paranoid. The place was unusually quiet, save for the hum of lights and the distant thrum of server racks processing God knows what. Most of the staff had gone home or retreated to the upper levels after a sudden security lockdown had been lifted only a few hours earlier. Marvin had been delayed from his normal route, which was why he found himself in the sublevels he rarely visited, Section Theta. Theta was the lowest of the low, an old wing buried deep in the facility, long abandoned and marked off limits. But the lockdown had malfunctioned some of the security systems, and the doors to Theta were left ajar. Marvin, ever curious when no one was watching, pushed them open with a hesitant hand. A puff of stale, dust-thick air met him, and he coughed, fanning it away with his mop handle. The hallway beyond was dimly lit, the lights flickering weakly as if surprised to be reactivated. The floor was grimy with layers of untouched dust, and the walls bore strange symbols, etched, not painted, like some forgotten language. Marvin muttered under his breath about nerdy art projects and made his way forward, following the glowing emergency lights that led deeper into the buried chamber. At the end of the hallway, a massive door loomed. Unlike the metal and steel design typical of the base, this one was made of obsidian black stone. It shimmered faintly, as if it drank in the light around it. In the center of the door was a pedestal, upon which sat a small orb, no larger than a baseball, smooth and etched with glowing veins of blue light. Marvin frowned, stepped closer, and squinted at the thing. It pulsed softly as if breathing. He didn't know why he touched it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was fate. But the moment his fingers made contact with the orb, the entire base trembled. Lights flared. Alarms that hadn't sounded in years screamed to life. The orb lifted off the pedestal, spinning in place as streams of energy burst from it, cascading over the walls, down the floor, up the ceiling. Marvin staggered back, shielding his eyes. The symbols on the walls glowed in response, forming patterns and connections, speaking a language no human had spoken in millennia. The door cracked open with a deep groan, revealing a chamber beyond bathed in light. Inside, a monolithic structure pulsed with the same energy, an ancient alien device, sleeping until now. Unseen by Marvin, a signal launched skyward from the device, piercing the Earth's atmosphere, scattering across satellites, bouncing from continent to continent in mere seconds. Invisible waves of quantum data raced into human biology, waking something long dormant. Marvin stood frozen, overwhelmed, heart pounding in his chest. He didn't notice at first the change in himself. But soon the subtle shift became a roar. His thoughts raced, not with panic, but with clarity. He remembered everything he'd ever read, seen, heard. His senses sharpened. He could hear the water pipes humming behind the walls. He could feel the vibrations of distant footsteps on the floor above. His body vibrated with energy, as if every atom had been rearranged, optimized, and awakened. All across the globe, others felt it too. In Tokyo, a street artist collapsed to her knees as visions filled her mind, blueprints of technology that didn't yet exist. In Lagos, a child looked up at the sky and whispered equations that cracked the code of gravity. In Buenos Aires, a nurse healed a patient's tumor with a mere touch. The awakening had begun. Back in the chamber, Marvin staggered into the glowing room, drawn to the machine at its center. He didn't understand it, not really. But somehow he did. It spoke to his newly awakened mind in concepts, in truths layered beneath truths. It was not a weapon, not entirely. It was a key, not to a door, but to a future that had once been lost. Eons ago, before human history began, another species had visited Earth, tall, luminous beings made of light and thought. They saw in primitive Earth a seed of something greater. They encoded part of themselves into the very fabric of humanity. A latent gift, but the wars that followed erased their legacy. Their devices were buried, their knowledge lost. Until Marvin Ellis touched the orb. Within hours, the world fell into chaos. People changed, some gradually, some violently. Not everyone could handle the awakening. Some minds cracked, unable to process the flood of insight and power. Governments panicked. Military forces were mobilized. Cities erupted in both celebration and fire. Marvin, still in the base, was found hours later by agents who stormed the facility. He didn't resist. He sat calmly in the glowing chamber, eyes closed, meditating in the center of the device's pulsing light. They dragged him away, but not before the machine had completed its task. Its energy faded, and it crumbled into dust. Its purpose fulfilled. He was interrogated for days, but Marvin no longer responded in the same language. He spoke in riddles, in metaphors. He described the future not as a timeline, but as a song with endless verses. The scientists tried to sedate him, but their drugs had no effect. His body healed faster than they could measure. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Word spread quickly. The name Marvin Ellis became synonymous with awakening. Conspiracy theorists hailed him as a prophet. Nations called for his execution, others for his liberation. But Marvin remained in a black site deep under the Rockies, silent, serene, watching the world above transform. In the weeks that followed, more devices like the one in Section Theta were discovered, hidden in pyramids, under oceans, inside forgotten caverns. None of them worked. Marvin had been the trigger. The others were echoes, residual beacons with no energy left to give. Humanity stood at the precipice. Some developed telepathy. Others could manipulate elements, bend metal, shape fire. Entire communities formed based on awakened abilities. But there were also the broken ones, those driven mad by the power, who saw humanity as flawed and demanded its reformation or destruction. War loomed, not between nations, but between the awakened and the dormant. And still Marvin waited. He saw what others couldn't. The awakening was only phase one. The device hadn't just unlocked power, it had sent a signal. A call. Something was coming. He saw it in his dreams, vast ships slicing through space, responding to the ancient beacon. The creators, or perhaps their remnants. And not all of them friendly. Humanity had been changed. But whether it had been prepared or marked was a question with no answer. One night, 6 months after the awakening, Marvin vanished from his cell. No cameras recorded his exit. No sensors tracked his movements. The only trace left behind was a single sentence etched into the stone wall. They are almost here. In the skies above Earth, telescopes recorded anomalies, stars disappearing, strange gravitational patterns, shadows without sources. Marvin walked among the newly awakened, unseen, guiding where he could. His mop replaced by silence, his uniform replaced by purpose. He had once been invisible, a janitor in the shadows of genius. Now, he was a shepherd to a species reborn. But time was running out. The ancient ones would arrive soon. And when they did, humanity would either prove itself worthy or perish trying.